relationship between outside and inside is much more ambiguous in this, and the shape goes in and out, so you can be inside the work and outside the work at the same time. For example, if you come in through there, whereas at the other end there's a clear border, and the plastic part in the middle, although it's connected by the loop to the outside, it employs clearly a different language. And at the same time, then that inside-outside relationship is carried on in the bikini, where you have this metal oval and the very large wooden form inside it, so within these three you have dialogues about relationships of inside to outside, the relationship of the way the body is described, the kinds of material of the body, of the object in the center, and then this tower-like construction of repeated elements. Again, you have a kind of perimeter, but in this case, the interior of the perimeter is defined by the meeting of three parts together, which forms this sort of the core in the middle of the work. And as you walk around it, the core kind of shifts and moves, so you have the sense of there being something moving, a kind of illusory volume in the middle of the work. The materiality, the materials, as I said, wood, metal, plastic, are all used very specifically. And this might be a conversation we could have about the way in which the wood is used to describe the volume, the relationship between wood and metal, etc. From these big works which talk to each other, and which you can just have this kind of real dialogue, the little ones, which are basically clay studies made in the last 5 years, are models or proposals for sculptural work, some of which are realized in the bigger ceramic things, but the idea behind them, behind having them all as one line, is it starts to become there's 92 of them. The 92 start to become one object with lots of variety in them. So if you see them just as individual things, then the relationship between small to big is familiar. But when you start to see them as within the space of this, within the large space, when you see that this concentration sustains a relationship to the big ones, which is quite interesting. I mean, you could even talk about the relationship of the shelf to the container of the steel containers. For example, as you know, so there's some relationship between imagination and order within those two, so that would then you think about that the freedom of those small parts in relationship to the curves within the wooden work here, and then so we go on. If you have questions, then
was this piece the result of a drawing before, or
no? This is.
Which is the relationship between drawings and sculptures? Are they precedents of the consequence?
Okay. The group of drawings which are on the other wall are made in 95, 96. So they're made before the small clay studies. Very few of these works have drawings for them. This one, no. This started with working with this element here, the twisted element, and making connections between the idea. I was interested in working between these twisted elements. So, for example, there are parts of this work. This here was made, and so these two and this one were made. These three. I was working with three separate objects, and it was a kind of realization that they could be connected together. So the work is improvised. And
so the twisted pieces are the beginning.
The twisted pieces are the beginning of the sculpture. Yeah. This one had a model for it, and this one there are drawings. This one does have a drawing of the individual parts and the idea that they interconnect, so it's a drawing for a part that is connectable one to the other, like a jigsaw. This one has a drawing for the steel element. The part in the middle is improvised. Okay. The sequence here is approximately chronological, with the oldest ones at that end and the most recent one at that end. It's not absolutely chronological because I wasn't numbering them to begin with. They're all made from a similar process with the color of the clay is not really particularly important. Sometimes it's white red, sometimes it's white. So the fact that it breaks up quite nicely into alternating red and white is more an accident than an intention. Each of them is made as starting with a small piece and then working on it in a particular way. So these for example, a car. These ones are made by hitting against the corner of the table. These ones are made. This one's a car. These are made by hitting the clay with a ball. These are made by rolling out and then packing together. These are made by hitting the clay with a stick. These are done by opening it up. And these are made by pulling out and banging together. So what I was doing with these was trying to find different ways of working with material, different propositions about how you use the thing, and then some were made up into larger objects, so that you can see, for example, this one here corresponds to the big one, the big red one at the back there. And you can identify all of these 5. You can find. I mean, this is a game that you can do. I mean, you can ask them to identify which one is connected to which one. I think they're all there. Some are easy. This one is very simple to find. The original thing. The color. The question of color then comes into it, because suddenly there is suddenly a question of color which seems in a way different from color in the other works. There is certainly color in the other works. The black on the blackened bits on the wood, the relationship between the blonde wood and the aluminium, the grey surfaces here. But then you have a question of color in these and how that color arises. And I don't have a really very good answer to that question. Other than, I mean, I can give you a technical answer. The process for making these is obviously that the clay is hand built and then it's put into the kiln to be fired. These are fired in one piece and one time. So it's raw glazed and they're raw glazed, not so it's not bisked and then glazed again. And it's that idea of the raw glaze seems to be the point which allows the introduction of color, because the glaze then it seems to be quite similar psychologically to putting the grey coat on it, whereas if they're bisked, then it becomes more like painting. It becomes an application of color. So the color seems to sit on the surface. But then I've also been using these quite elaborate glazes with many 3 or 4 glazes on the same piece to get these quite fluid surfaces. So there's also something about an idea about fluidity in the surface that I'm interested in, and the way in which this very painterly quality reflects something of that interest. But I also think it connects to the use of colour or the use of this painterly surface relates to the way these drawings work, which is and the drawings are a kind of catalogue of the ways in which a black mark, a very simple black mark, can describe different kinds of surface, has different kinds of qualities. So I think that's a kind of, there is a connection between the use of these, the use of colour on this surface and the ways in which this collection of drawings talks about the relationship of a mark to a form. That's the kind of connection I think there is. So these drawings were all made in 95, 96. Mostly they were made when I was traveling. I was teaching in Vienna and traveling between Vienna and London, and most of these were made in the hotel room in Vienna. I'd started with the idea of wanting to make some small drawings, I was working on an idea of a group of a group of small drawings. I was interested in, to begin with, I mean this is at the beginning, I was interested in something like a rubber stamp. But I didn't want to use a very small piece of paper, because I found that quite restricting. So I used the piece of paper I had, I divided into 4 parts, thinking that I'd cut them up afterwards to make a, but then, so this division into 4 parts was originally a functional division to do with with just keeping the 4 quadrants separate, so the drawings that I did didn't stay within these boundaries. But after a while, after I'd done a few, I realized that the collection of 4 on the page was also there was something about the grouping of 4 which was more interesting than it separately, and that this rectangular division was also a drawing, was also a part of the drawing. So then, after about this point, I began to work on them as groups of 4 rather than drawings that I thought I was going to cut up. So the first, and the procedure was quite, because this line was the first thing that I did, it was a way of starting on the piece of paper with we made a mark on the paper with that before I got into thinking about it. So then it sort of evolved into this exploration of the ways in which a black line can describe a form, a kind of catalogue of or a dictionary of ways of description with a line which didn't have any tonality to it. It was just black. The titles for the works, all the works are titled, and titling is a process which is mostly to do with content and whatever I was thinking about at the time. Waiting for the Rain, for example, for this one, there's a fairly clear connection between that. This is the only unglazed one. The surface is unglazed in this one. So the rain in that, the rain is a kind of analog for the this kind of fluid color on the other works. And this one has a subtitle. So these two are both have the same title, Like You Know, and this is also Like You Know, but it has a subtitle which is from a painting by Velázquez, which is in the National Gallery of Scotland. The painting is of an old woman frying eggs, and what I liked about the painting was the way the painting describes that moment when you're cooking eggs, when the transparency begins to become opaque. You get that sort of those strands of white in the and that as a metaphor for things coming into being, for form starting to appear. So that, I mean, that's the relationship here. This work is called Almost. So in some senses, Almost, and I've often used titles which suggest that the thing is not quite ready or not quite cooked. So the old lady frying, cooking eggs is another example of that. So it's a way in which the work is in the process of appearing, and that, or in the process of coming into clear focus. And then, so that following that thought through, the title for this work, which is When the Landmasses First Appeared, which is the first line from a text I wrote about the way in which the continents appeared from a cooling Earth, and the idea that so you can look at the horizontal here as being somehow a description of a horizon, a water surface, and something appearing out of it. The thing that I had been interested in was the way in which geologists could trace the evolution of the continents back through time to the original form, so that and the idea that the continent shifted around and could produce a map of the original disposition of the continents in the supercontinent called Pangaea. And I thought it was a wonderful example of knowledge that you could think of the Earth as being different. It could be a different place, and there could be a map of the place you were standing in, but the map was of a place you didn't recognize.
And usually I read a little some works after the piece is done.
Mostly yes, mostly yes. Some bikini, for example, there was an idea before.
And it really influences the final result. When you have the title in mind first, or you just have the word in mind and...
the word, so sometimes it becomes like a slogan, and sometimes I stick with it, and sometimes it doesn't. With bikini, I thought it was such I was interested in before I started the work, I'd been thinking about the relationship with, I'd read something about Bikini Atoll and the bikini, and that it was the same word, and that the fashion designer who produced the two-piece swimwear called it the bikini because it was the ultimate, and I thought it was really obscene, the connection between the H-bomb test on Bikini Atoll and the piece of swimwear, but that somehow it had kind of entered the language and become so 100 years from now people will still talk about bikinis but have no idea that the beginning is that's where the word comes from. So that etymology of language I thought was really there's some way in which that connects up to the idea of mapping in this, so that you the way in which history mutates, and the map records that history, and language contains history, and we use it without really knowing what its origins were.
What about that title?
How much? That's the only title that we have here that somebody else gave me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and someone said that's like the Deacon title, and I've never retitled it. The work was made. Originally, the work was made there are 21 parts in this, and I made 23, and the first the first time I showed the work, it was in a completely different configuration. It was a kind of network that was suspended in Zaha Hadid's pavilion for the Greenwich Dome Millennium. The idea with the work was it was always configurable, reconfigurable. So after it was taken away from, and the idea of mentality for me in the work was this sort of a network that the things could have. So the title came with the work, and when I got the work back, I began to think about how I might reconfigure it and make it autonomous from a building, so it was no longer attached to a building. And the idea, and then I realized that I could make these towers out of it. And in a way, you can think of that almost like storage. But the network idea stayed with this way in which, like I say, the center becomes is always this sort of illusory column in the center of it. Out of order, the final title is, well, to begin with, as I explained it when we started, I was working with this twisted element, and there was some rough connection between. The reason I was interested in that twisted element was a connection with some exploration I was doing about DNA and about this helical twist in DNA. So to begin with, I thought that Out of Africa was a possible title for this, since that was human origin. But then Out of Order actually was a much better title, because it means it comes from, it has a kind of double meaning in English. It means it comes from order, so it comes from organization, but it also means that it's not working. So it has this very nice double meaning in English. Okay? Questions? More?
¿Queréis preguntar?
Okay?
No, estaba preguntando. Maybe they will have some questions after they listen
Sure.
10 times to the
Yeah,
tape.
yeah.
And get it, because...
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.